Hey loves, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I am so glad you found your way to this message tonight, because something tells me you were meant to. And if you're already part of this little family, welcome back, pour yourself something warm, get comfortable. Because this one is detailed. Like, detailed, detailed. Okay, let's not waste any more time, because the energy on this deck right now is loud. Tonight, I'm pulling a message about a very specific man. A man who was repressing how he felt about you for a long time, and I mean repressing it on purpose, with effort, like a full-time job. And the title of this reading is not exaggerating. There was a moment, a specific moment, where the universe, where God, where his own higher self, whatever language resonates with you, pulled the rug out from under him and exposed something he had been hiding, even from himself. We're going to find out exactly what that was tonight. So if you feel that flutter in your chest right now, that's your confirmation. Stay with me. Let's pull our first card and go straight into his heart space. The first card we have is the King of Pentacles, and loves immediately. Before I even fully turned it over, I heard the word fortress. This is a man who built a fortress. Not just financially, though yes, there's wealth here, there's status. There's a man who has made himself comfortable and secure in a way that most people spend their whole lives chasing. But the fortress isn't just around his money. It's around his heart. This is someone who decided, a long time ago, that vulnerability was a liability. And I want to be really clear about this, because I think it's important he didn't become this way for no reason. Somewhere in his story, being soft cost him something. Being open got him hurt, or got him taken advantage of, or made him feel weak in a moment where he couldn't afford to be weak. And so he built the fortress, brick by brick. And it worked. It genuinely worked. He became powerful. He became someone people respect, maybe even fear a little. But here's what the King of Pentacles is telling me. A fortress keeps everything out, including the good things. And he's starting to realize that the very walls that made him successful are the same walls keeping him from the one thing he didn't plan for. You. Comment fortress below if you already know in your gut that the man on your mind is exactly this kind of person, guarded, successful, hard to read. I want to see how many of you are nodding at your screen right now. Let's pull the next one. Okay. The next card is the Eight of Swords. And this is so telling. The Eight of Swords is a card of feeling trapped, but here's the thing about this card that most people miss. The figure in this card is blindfolded and bound, surrounded by swords, looking completely stuck. But if you look closely, the bindings are loose. The path out is right there. The trap is mostly in the mind. And that is exactly where your person has been living, trapped in a prison of his own making. He has been telling himself a story that he can't feel this way, that he doesn't have time for this, that love is a distraction he can't afford, that letting you in would unravel everything he built. And he believed that story so completely that he stayed bound by it, even while the way out was sitting right in front of him the whole time. This is the repression the title is talking about. This is what he was doing every single day, talking himself out of you, constructing reasons, building cases against his own heart like a lawyer arguing against himself. She's a distraction. The timing is wrong. I have too much going on. I can't lose focus. On and on, day after day. This internal courtroom, where he was both the prosecutor and the defendant, and he kept ruling against himself. But the Eight of Swords also tells me something hopeful. This kind of trap always breaks eventually. You can only hold a blindfold over your own eyes for so long before something rips it off. And that brings us to the heart of tonight's message. Let's pull the next card, because I want to know what God exposed. Oh, okay, the Tower. The Tower came out, and loves, if you know tarot at all, you know exactly what this means. This is the moment. This is the exposure. This is the rug being pulled. The Tower is the card of sudden revelation, of the lightning bolt that strikes the structure you thought was permanent and brings it crashing down in an instant. And I want to be really careful here, because the Tower can feel scary, but in matters of the heart, The tower is often a mercy. It's the universe doing for you what you refuse to do for yourself. Here's what I'm getting about what was exposed. Your person had a moment, and I feel like this was recent, within the last couple of months, where something happened that made it impossible for him to keep pretending. And it wasn't necessarily a big dramatic event. Sometimes the tower is loud, but sometimes it's a single quiet moment that hits like a freight train. Let me tell you what I'm seeing. I'm getting the image of him in a moment where he thought he might lose you, or where he saw you with the possibility of someone else, or where you pulled back, even slightly, even unintentionally, and the reaction inside of him was so violent, so disproportionate to what he'd been telling himself he felt, that the whole story collapsed. In that one moment, the lie he'd been maintaining, I don't have real feelings for her, she's just a distraction, completely shattered. Because you don't feel that level of panic, that level of no, absolutely not, I cannot lose this about a distraction. You feel that about something essential. That was the exposure. God didn't expose his feelings to you. Loves, God exposed his feelings to him. He was the one in the dark. You may have known how you felt all along. He was the one being protected from a truth he wasn't ready for, until suddenly he was forced to look directly at it. Comment the tower moment if something in your connection recently shifted out of nowhere, a sudden change in how he was acting. A moment of unexpected intensity. A wall that cracked when you weren't expecting it. I really want to know how many of you felt this happen in real time. Let's pull the next card and find out how he's handling this exposure. The next card is the Five of Cups, and this is the grief of it. This is the part nobody talks about. When a man like this finally admits to himself how he feels about someone, his first emotion isn't always joy. Sometimes it's grief. Because the Five of Cups is about mourning what you thought your life was going to be. He had a plan. I cannot stress this enough. This is a man who had a plan. A 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, a vision of exactly how his life was supposed to go, exactly who he was supposed to be, exactly what kind of partner was supposed to fit neatly into the corner of his life he'd allotted for one. And you blew all of that up. You didn't fit the slot. You weren't on the schedule. You arrived early, or you arrived in the wrong format, or you arrived as a whole entire person with your own gravity, instead of a tidy accessory to his empire. And so part of him is grieving. He's looking at the 3 spilled cups in front of him, the version of his life he was building, the version of himself who didn't need anyone, the future he had mapped out where he was the only variable that mattered, and he's mourning it. Because to choose you, he has to let some of that die. But here's what the Five of Cups always shows, and most people forget this part. There are 2 cups still standing behind the figure. 2 full cups he hasn't even turned around to see yet. And those 2 cups are you. They're the future he didn't plan for, but is going to be infinitely better than the one he did. He's just so busy grieving the spilled ones that he hasn't fully turned around yet. But he will. Let's pull the next card. The Knight of Cups, reversed. And this is such an important card to come out right now, because it's showing me the resistance. The Knight of Cups upright is the romantic, the one who rides in with his heart on his sleeve and offers it freely. Reversed, he's the man who has all of those feelings genuinely, deeply has them, but is holding them hostage. He's the romantic with the parking brake on. This is your person right now. He has the feelings. The tower already exposed them. He can't pretend anymore that they don't exist. But there's a gap, loves, and I want to name this gap because I think this is where a lot of you are stuck right now. There's a gap between knowing he has feelings and acting on them. He has crossed the first bridge, he's admitted it to himself. He has not yet crossed the second bridge, admitting it to you. And I'm getting that he's stuck in a really specific kind of paralysis. It's the paralysis of someone who is very, very good at controlling outcomes. This is a man who in business, in his career, in every other area of his life, can engineer the result he wants. He plans, he strategizes, he executes, he wins. But love doesn't work like that. He can't strategize his way into making you feel a certain way. He can't guarantee the outcome. And for someone whose entire identity is built on controlling outcomes, that loss of control is terrifying. Genuinely terrifying. More terrifying than any business risk he's ever taken. Because the stakes are his actual heart. So he's a Knight of Cups reversed. Full of feeling, frozen by the one variable he can't control, which is you, and how you'll respond. Comment parking brake if you felt this exact energy from your person, like he's right there. Like you can feel everything he's not saying, but he just won't take the final step. I see you. This card is for you specifically. Let's keep going. Because I want to know what he wants to do about all of this. The next card we have is the Two of Cups. And oh, loves, this is the card I was hoping to see. After all that resistance, all that grief, all that frozen feeling, the Two of Cups is the card of union, of two people standing face to face and choosing each other as equals. And this tells me where this is heading. Despite all the resistance, despite the grief over his old life, despite the parking brake, the destination here is partnership, real partnership. The Two of Cups is not a fling. It's not a situationship. It's not something casual. It's two people deciding to merge their lives. And the reason this card is so powerful coming after everything else is that it confirms his resistance is losing. The fortress is coming down. The blindfold is off. The tower already struck. And what's emerging from the rubble is this a genuine, equal, face-to-face partnership. But I want to add something here that I think is the gap in a lot of readings like this. And it's important. The Two of Cups requires both people to be standing. It's not one person offering and one person receiving. It's two cups raised together. So as much as this reading is about him, about his journey, his resistance, his exposure, this card is asking something of you, Divine Feminine. It's asking you to stay open, to not harden in response to his hesitation. Because the natural thing when someone keeps you at arm's length is to put your own walls up to protect yourself. And that's valid. But this card is telling me that what unlocks this connection is you holding your ground softly, not chasing him, not begging, but also not slamming your own door just because he's been slow to open his. You hold the second cup. He's reaching for the first. The union happens when you both raise them at the same time. Let's pull the next card. The next card is the Queen of Swords. And this is you, loves. And I love that this came out because I think you've been undersold to yourself in this connection. You've maybe been seeing yourself as the one waiting, the one wondering, the one on the receiving end of his indecision. But the Queen of Swords is not a woman who waits around. The Queen of Swords is sharp. She's perceptive. She sees through things. She is not easily fooled, and she does not suffer nonsense. And this is exactly why he fell for you, and it's also exactly what unnerves him. Because the Queen of Swords looks at this powerful, guarded, fortress-building man, and she sees him. She's not impressed by the fortress. She's not dazzled by the wealth, or the status, or the carefully constructed image he presents to the world. She looks straight past all of it, directly into him. And that is something almost no one in his life does. Everyone else sees the King of Pentacles, the empire, the title, the power. You see the actual man inside the fortress. And being truly seen, after a lifetime of being admired but not known, is the most disarming thing in the world for someone like him. This connects to something I keep getting about your eyes, about your gaze, about the way you look at him. You don't flinch. You don't shrink. Where other people cower in front of his energy or perform for his approval, you just look at him levelly, like a person looking at another person. And to him, that is rare to the point of being almost supernatural. It's the thing he can't explain and can't get over. But the Queen of Swords also carries a warning for you, Divine Feminine, and I'd be doing you a disservice not to mention it. This card sometimes shows up when a woman has been thinking herself in circles, overanalyzing, reading every text twice, trying to logic her way into understanding a man who is being driven by emotions he hasn't even fully named yet. So, if that's you, if you've been lying awake, running the analysis, building your own internal courtroom the same way he's building his The Queen of Swords, is gently telling you to put the sword down sometimes. You don't have to solve him. You just have to keep being the clear, perceptive, grounded woman who saw him in the first place. Comment she sees him if you've always had this ability to look past people's masks and see who they really are. Because I think that's one of your gifts. And I think it's a huge part of why this is happening. Let's pull our next card, because I want to get even more specific about what's coming. The next card is the Page of Wands. And this is a spark. This is news. This is movement on the horizon. The Page of Wands often comes through as a message, a sudden burst of inspiration or courage, an unexpected reaching out. And here's what I'm feeling about this. The Page of Wands tells me that after all this internal processing, the exposure, the grief, the resistance your person is building toward an action, there's a spark catching. And I don't think it's going to look like some grand cinematic gesture, because that's not who he is. This is not a man who shows up at your door with a stadium full of roses. His version of a grand gesture is going to be quieter, but for him, more enormous. It's going to be him doing something that costs him his comfort, saying something that makes him vulnerable. Reaching out when reaching out is the hardest thing for him to do. For some of you, this Page of Wands is a literal message that's coming. A text, a call, a conversation he initiates that surprises you with its directness. He's been so controlled, so measured, that when this spark finally catches, it might come out a little clumsy. He might fumble it. He's out of practice at being vulnerable because he spent years being impenetrable. So if it comes through a little awkward, a little stilted, a little not quite right, have grace for that. That awkwardness is not a lack of feeling. It's the opposite. It's a man feeling so much that he's lost his usual smoothness. Let's pull our next card, the Six of Cups. And this is so sweet and so unexpected for a man with this much armor. The Six of Cups is nostalgia, innocence, a return to something pure and tender. And what I'm getting is that being around you takes him back to a version of himself he thought was gone. Before the fortress. Before he decided softness was weakness. Before he hardened himself into the powerful, calculated man he is today, there was a younger version of him who was open, who felt things freely, who maybe loved easily before life taught him to stop. And you, divine feminine, somehow reached that younger self. When he's with you, that buried, tender, hopeful version of him comes back to the surface, and it stuns him. Because he genuinely thought that person was dead and buried. He thought he traded that softness permanently for success. And you've shown him that it's still in there, dormant, but alive. This is part of why he says, in the silence of his own mind, that this could destroy him. Because to be with you means letting that softer self live again. And he's terrified of what that means. He's terrified that the man who feels things, who needs someone, who can be hurt, is not compatible with the empire he's built. He hasn't figured out yet that you can be both. That the strongest version of him isn't the one with the highest walls, it's the one secure enough to lower them for the right person. Comment both if you believe, like I do, that a man can be powerful and tender, strong and open. Because I think your person needs to learn that lesson. And I think you might be the one teaching it. Let's pull the next card, the Ace of Cups. Loves, the Ace of Cups. This is the overflowing of emotion. This is the cup that cannot hold any more and spills over the edges. This is the floodgate. And after everything we've seen tonight, the fortress, the trap, the tower, the grief, the frozen feeling, the Ace of Cups is the dam finally breaking. This is the moment all the repressed emotion that he's been holding back, controlling, denying, strategizing against, finally overflows. And the thing about the Ace of Cups is that it's not gradual. It's a flood. When this man finally lets himself feel it fully, it's not going to be a slow trickle. It's going to be everything at once. All the months or years of suppressed feeling pouring out. I'm getting that when this happens, when he finally fully opens, it's going to surprise even you, divine feminine. Because you've gotten so used to the guarded version of him, the measured version, the one who gives you crumbs of warmth and then retreats. You might not be prepared for the version of him that finally lets the cup overflow. It's going to be more emotional, more devoted, more all in than you expected from a man who held so much back. The depth of what he was hiding is proportional to how hard he was hiding it. He wasn't guarding crumbs, he was guarding an ocean. Let's pull our final card to bring this all together. The world. Our final card is the world. And loves, I actually felt a chill when this turned over, because there was no better card the universe could have placed at the close of a reading like this. The world is completion, fulfillment, wholeness. It is the very last card of the entire major arcana, the final step of a long sacred, transformative journey, and the fact that it came out as the closing message about your person is telling me something enormous about where this is headed and what it actually means for both of you. Let me start with what the world means at its core, because I want you to feel the full weight of it. In the story of the tarot, everything begins with the fool, a wide-eyed, naive figure stepping off a cliff into the unknown with absolutely no idea what's ahead of him. And the entire major arcana, from the fool all the way to the world, is the story of that figure's journey through every lesson life can teach. Love, loss, power, surrender, destruction, rebirth. The tower we pulled earlier in this reading is part of that very same journey. It's the lightning strike that tears down everything false. And the world is where it all ends. The world is the moment the traveler arrives, finally whole, finally integrated, having survived everything and become everything he was meant to be. So for this card to be the final word on your person tonight, is the universe telling me that this connection with you is not a side quest in his life. It is not a chapter. It is the culmination. Everything he built, everything he survived, every wall he raised, and every battle he won, all of it, in some cosmic sense, was leading him here, to you, to the moment he finally becomes complete. And here's the part that I think is so beautiful and so important for you to understand. Divine feminine. He does not become whole through more achievement. That's the great irony of this entire reading. This is a man who spent his whole life believing that wholeness came from accumulation, more wealth, more power, more status, more control, more fortress. He built and built and built, convinced that the next acquisition, the next milestone, the next conquered goal would finally make him feel complete. And it never did. There was always a gap, always something missing that no amount of success could fill. The world is showing me that he finally finds that missing piece. And it is not another trophy for the empire. It is you. It is love. It is the one thing he could never strategize his way into, never purchase, never earn through sheer force of will. He completes himself by finally letting in the very thing he spent his whole life keeping out. The world is the marriage of his power and his tenderness. That's what I keep coming back to. Throughout this entire reading, we've seen these two halves of him at war, the King of Pentacles fortress versus the Six of Cups tender child. The ruthless strategist versus the man who feels everything. The one who built walls versus the one who's terrified those walls are coming down. And the world is the resolution of that war. It is the moment those two halves stop fighting and finally integrate into one complete person. He doesn't have to choose between being powerful and being soft. He doesn't have to kill the tender part to keep the strong part, which is the false belief that imprisoned him for so long. The world shows him that the most whole, most powerful, most fully realized version of himself is the one who can hold both, strength and surrender, empire and intimacy, the man at the top of the fortress and the man who lets one person all the way inside it. That's the completion. That's the wholeness. And he only ever arrives there through you. Now, I want to speak to what the world means for the longevity of this connection, because this is where it becomes a quiet promise to you specifically. The world is not a card of beginnings, it's a card of things locking permanently into place. It's the card of arrival, of stability, of a cycle fully completing and becoming the solid ground you build the rest of your life on. So when this card closes a reading about a romantic connection, it is telling me that whatever forms between you and this man is not fleeting. It is not the kind of thing that flares up bright and burns out fast. It has staying power. It has roots. It is foundational. Everything we talked about tonight, the union of the Two of Cups, the overflowing devotion of the Ace of Cups, the power couple energy, the partnership of equals the world takes all of that and stamps it with permanence. This is not a man who is going to feel deeply for a season and then walk away when it gets hard. The world does not deal in temporary things. It deals in completion, and completion, by its very nature, lasts. And I think that matters so much for you to hear. Divine Feminine. Because I have a feeling that some part of you has been bracing. After all the resistance, after all the times you watched him retreat, after all the moments you weren't sure where you stood, I think there's a protective part of you that has been quietly preparing for this to be one more thing that doesn't work out. One more man who feels deeply and then disappears. One more situation where you give your whole, perceptive, nurturing heart and get left holding it alone. The world is the universe gently putting its hand on your shoulder and saying, "Not this time. This one is different. This one completes. This one stays." Let me also say something about the timing and the energy the world carries, because it adds another layer. The world often shows up when a long, sometimes exhausting cycle is finally coming to a close, when you've been traveling towards something for so long that you've almost forgotten what arriving would even feel like. So if you've been in this connection or this waiting place for a while, if it has tested your patience, made you question yourself, stretched you thin, the world is confirmation that the long stretch of uncertainty is genuinely ending. You are near the arrival. Not at the beginning of the climb, not somewhere lost in the middle of it, but close to the summit. The hardest, most uncertain part, the part where you couldn't see the destination and had to keep going on faith alone, is behind you, or very nearly so. What's ahead is the completion of everything you've been moving toward. There's one more dimension of the world I want to make sure I give you, because it's the most empowering one and I don't want it to get lost. The world is also a card of mastery, of having learned every lesson a journey had to teach and emerging genuinely transformed. Not the same person you were when you started. And while we've talked about this mostly in terms of his transformation, I want you to understand that the world is reflecting something back about you too. Because you are not the same woman you were when this connection began either. You have grown. You have learned. You have held your ground through uncertainty, kept your dignity through his hesitation, stayed grounded, while a powerful man circled and studied and resisted and finally surrendered. That took strength. That took a kind of quiet mastery of your own. And the world is honoring that in you. It's saying that you didn't just wait around for him to figure it out, you became more fully yourself in the process. You held your gravity. You kept your standard. And that is precisely why the world gets to be the ending of this story instead of some lesser card. You earned this completion just as much as he did, maybe more. So when I put all of it together, this is what the world is telling me as the final word tonight. This connection is the culmination of his entire life's journey, not a footnote in it. He becomes whole through you, not through more success, but through finally letting love in. The two warring halves of him, the powerful and the tender, finally integrate into one complete man. And he only ever gets there because you reach the part of him no one else could. What forms between you is permanent, foundational, built to last, not a flare that fizzles. The long and exhausting stretch of uncertainty is ending, and arrival is close. And through all of it, you have been growing and mastering your own journey, right alongside his, which is exactly why you've earned the wholeness that's coming just as much as he has. That, loves, is the world. And I genuinely could not have asked for a more complete, more hopeful, more affirming card to close this reading. It ties a bow on everything: the fortress that finally falls, the feelings that finally flood, the man who finally arrives, and the woman who was strong enough and clear enough and patient enough to make all of it possible just by being exactly who she is.